Hello dear ELL teaching colleagues, welcome to my channel Alyona's Language Class Live, where I share tips, recommendations, interactive video lessons, and ready-made resources for English language learners of a variety of proficiency levels. Today I'm going to tell you briefly about and to share with you for free my presentation that I use with regular newcomers, SLIFE students, and some of the early twos to help them build understanding of some of the foundational concepts of the English grammar, and specifically speaking of syntax. The presentation that I'm ready to share with you today is devoted to subject and predicate and verbs. It also contains my daily speaking routine in which I target specific forms of verbs and also use relatable vocabulary, both from the survival English realm and from the academic language. We know that it's the verbs that drive the production in a language. We might know a lot of nouns and even adjectives, but without knowing how to connect them in a cohesive and meaningful sentence, all of those words are just a collection of isolated pieces. I do want to start with a disclaimer that these mini lessons are meant to build background knowledge, to offer clarifications, and to provide initial practice of the concept before students are offered comprehensive grammar instruction via other resources. I will make a couple of suggestions for curriculums and books that I like to use. Lesson 1 is devoted to subject and predicate. I start my presentation by offering my students a bird's eye view of learning a language. If you have seen my videos that I actually titled A Bird's Eye View of ELD Curriculum, you know that I always say that when we're learning a language, we learn to do two things. One, to understand texts, they could be written or oral texts, and two, to produce texts. Again, we can say or write them. I offer the same concept to my students, and this way they can understand right away why they need to know anything about sentences. And then I draw the bridge to the subject and predicate. I do like to bring in a little bit of humor to make sure that my students are also having fun learning these concepts. I also make this analogy by comparing a sentence to a person. The subject would be the head of the person, and the predicate would be the body. The subject is who or what, and the predicate is what moves this idea or subject. We are looking at more examples, in fact, a lot of models and a couple of activities. And then at the end of each lesson, I have a speaking and writing practice where they are asked to produce sentences looking at the pictures. In the beginning of each new lesson, which here we have lesson 2 devoted to verbs, I have my daily speaking warm-up. The first 2 slides are devoted to using predicates with the verb to be. Here I bring in more of the survival English, calendar, the actions, clothes. Here we have verbs that are not the to be verbs, the verbs that require the auxiliary verb do and does in questions and in short responses, a little bit more, subject and predicate, and then I am stating that every predicate in English language has to have a verb. Again, a lot of examples, here a little bit more of an academic topic, some more examples. And here I'm asking them to put the right verbs that would go with that subject in the sentence. Another one just like that. And here speaking and writing practice where I'm asking for a different level of production. Lesson 3 is action verbs. Again, daily speaking warm up. Here I'm using similar sentences but adding new ones. I'm adding months to the calendar. Clothes, here they would have to use the verb is instead of am. And again, other verbs, not just to be. And we're moving on to the topic of action verbs. As you notice, I always make a connection to what they have just done. You just spoke using different verbs, and then I tell them that there are also action verbs. We talk about them a little bit, we act them out, and we're looking at how they're used in sentences. And here they are asked to insert action verbs based on what they see on the pictures and the words they are reading. Here they will need to remember the action verbs that go with these pictures. They're matching the predicate with those verbs to the subjects. Here's a little silly assignment. Students always love reading something like children don't sleep at night, pandas read books in the library, people eat bamboo, and so on. Here I am drawing their attention to the concept of singular and plural, although this is not the objective in this presentation. Lesson 4 is devoted to the modal verb can plus action verbs, speaking warm-up. Here they are describing other people wearing different clothes. I've done this in the previous lesson too, where they will have to ask a classmate or the teacher the same question: do you ride a scooter to school? And then they would have to answer mine: does he or she ride a scooter to school? A little more. And again, you have just said several sentences using action verbs, and very often we use the verb can with action verbs. Here they are. You'll see a little bit of a silliness again. And now they'll have to talk about their special talent or an unusual ability. I'm even asking them to use Google Translate if they need help with saying this in English.
Just to give your students some ideas of unusual abilities, I have a link to a video where people are performing some of their unique skills. Just make sure to watch it ahead of time to make sure that it's appropriate for your group of students. And last but not least, I'm going to throw in these 3 grammar CLOZE reusable sheets. All you have to do is to put them in plastic files and give your students a skinny dry erase marker. They can use this in the beginning of each lesson independently or with a partner or in a small group as a quick warm-up and for you to keep checking on their progress. If you like this, you will find one for each of the lessons in this grammar presentation that is part of this grammar workbook that I've put together to go along with the presentation and that I have added to my TPT store for a small price. And as promised, here are my recommendations for resources for comprehensive grammar instruction.
My absolute favorite is Basic Grammar in Use, American edition. It starts with the verbs am, is, are. It has pictures, easy exercises for understanding, practice, and drilling. It continues with am, is, are, and moves on to present continuous, so present progressive. It moves on down the tenses, and then it has modal verbs, prepositions, construction the, the is, auxiliary verbs, and so on. Very clear structure. I absolutely love this resource. As you probably have noticed, a lot of the language development resources come with grammar practice. For example, National Geographic's practice book has a whole section on grammar. It also has tenses and sentence structure. I do like to combine it with the English grammar in use, however. This is the next step from National Geographic's The Edge. Even something as basic as this resource, SPIN, Grammar, Vocabulary, and Writing. Although it's created for younger learners, I find it especially helpful with some SLIFE students who really need to start very basic and in a SLIFE-friendly manner, meaning without overwhelming them with a lot of writing and a lot of text and with a lot of reading. Even something like this has grammar practice, such as verbs and adjectives and nouns. My other favorite resource that I recommend for any ELL teacher to try to get, it's a paid resource, is Lexia Power Up. It has fantastic grammar lesson, and they will combine very nicely with something like this, with my built-in background presentations, and with other resources that you might be using in your language development curriculum. All right, I hope you will enjoy my presentation. If you have any questions, reach out here in my group Alyona's ELL Class Live or in Messenger. I will continue working on these presentations. I think my next victim is nouns, and then after that I will have adjectives. All of the links are below. Happy teaching, everyone.